welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Coming up on the program, the head of the University of Illinois talks tuition hikes and higher education in the state. Illinois' new Senate President Don Harmon is here. An art gallery finds a new home on the south side, and it might not be where you'd expect. And Cook County jail inmates are making biodiesel fuel from used vegetable oil. But first, high lake levels, up and down temperatures, and winter storms have battered Chicago's lakefront in recent weeks. Some beaches are completely gone. In other cases, crews work on emergency projects to protect the shoreline and adjacent land from further damage. But could a bigger redesign of the lakefront ultimately be necessary? In Rogers Park on the far north side, the lake has been creeping in on three small beaches: Juneway, Rogers, and Howard. Some residents in this pocket east of Sheridan Road are disappointed that city crews are covering beach and parkland with boulder revetments, giant rocks designed to prevent further erosion.
We wish they would have conserved part of the beach. I understand their concerns, but the neighborhood, you know, we have thousands of people who use these beaches, and that's why they live here, so it's upsetting.
But city officials worried without drastic measures, erosion could mean losing the parkland or even damage to the street. The hope is that come summertime, some of the boulders can be removed.
But it's not going to be easy to move these rocks. You're going to have to get the same kind of equipment back in here to move them, just to have a little beach access. We'll just have to wait and see.
Beaches along Chicago's lakefront took a beating this month. South Shore residents in buildings right on the lake faced down huge waves that dumped water into their homes. Stretches of the lakefront, battered by high waves, have cracked concrete and debris covering trails and parkland.
It's amazing how fast and how much damage one storm can do.
And some residents fear climate change could mean long-term alterations to the lakefront, beyond the emergency fixes.
The issue is the water's going to be going up and down. More cycles, more extreme weather. But we're hoping in 3 to 5 years they really can redesign these beaches to be sustainable.
Joining us now with more are Alderwoman Maria Haddon, whose 49th ward includes Rogers Park's lakefront on the far north side. Kim Van Meter, an eco-hydrologist and assistant professor in the University of Illinois at Chicago's Earth and Environmental Sciences Department, and State Representative Cam Buckner, whose 26th district includes stretches of the lakefront from the Gold Coast down to Oakland. Welcome all of you to Chicago Tonight. First, Alderwoman Haddon, what is the status of some of these destroyed beaches in Rogers Park right now?
Right now, we've seen almost completion of the emergency land stabilization work that CDOT and the Park District have been coordinating. So at Juneway, Rogers, and Howard, we saw not only the erosion of the sand in the beach area, but also dangerous erosion on the land that was putting at risk the parks, some private property, and of course the public streets. So thanks to some quick action that started at the end of last year, those areas have been stabilized. Unfortunately, with the storm that we saw a couple of weeks ago, some of the areas that the engineers believed they would be able to leave open for lake access for residents have now had to be covered with the boulder revetments as well.
Representative Buckner, what about downtown on through the South Shore?
Yeah, what we've seen in the beaches from about Roosevelt south to South Shore is that we have not created any kind of mitigation for those beaches yet. There's been a lot of talk through the state, the city, and some of our federal agencies to try to make sure we can all come together to address this, because the January 11th storm really did a real disservice to a area that was already dilapidated.
Kim Van Meter, what's causing the seemingly more pronounced erosion that's happened in the past few weeks?
Well, of course, we have normal variations in lake levels that happen over time, but right now we're seeing really record or near record high water levels. And then when you have a winter storm coming in and those big waves, it's going to cause that big damage.
And remind us why the water levels are at such record highs.
Well, water levels are driven by several different things. Precipitation, of course. If you have reduced evaporation, if you have a lot of ice on the lake, not as much water can evaporate. So you keep that water in the system. But more precipitation, big extreme storm events, the water levels just come up.
Alderwoman Haddon, you saw some of those residents that were disappointed at the revetments, those big stones that have been put in place at the beaches. Mm-hmm. Are those there permanently, or could some sort of beach return at some point?
Right now, the hopes is that that's a 3 to 5 year solution, right? So just stabilizing the land. The Park District, the Department of Transportation, and other partners were working on finding a plan, and largely funding that will ultimately include federal, state, and city funding to make sure that we can come up with sustainable solutions for the broader, not just those 3 beaches, but the broader lakefront.
So a long-term solution would not be those big giant stones there, would
Correct.
they?
That would not. So we see really great examples of some previous work through another funding measure. You could see at Fullerton or Montrose, some areas that are more central to the immediate north and immediate south of the city. So those are the type of build-outs that we'd be looking at, but we're a little ways off for securing that funding.
Representative Buckner, you mentioned that there are no real remediation efforts underway right now on the South Shore. What exactly does that shoreline need?
Well, what it needs is the intention and investment from all of the agencies that have something to do with this, right? So to me, that looks like a state solution. It looks like a CDOT and a Park District solution. It also means engaging the United States Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that we can not only just, as I said, mitigate what has happened thus far, but to have a comprehensive long-term solution so that in the future we don't have these same
And are
issues.
these agencies working on something like this right now?
We are. So myself and Representative Curtis Tarver have started a task force to try to bring all the stakeholders to the table to have these conversations so we can elevate the conversation to make sure that these things are being addressed.
What about the state capital bill, $45 billion that just passed not even a year ago?
Yeah.
Could some of that be used for remediation?
I would hope so. I've been in contact with the governor's office about that, about those infrastructure dollars going to lakefront erosion, and able to move the needle on those things.
Kim Van Meter, there's a Midwest author, Dan Egan, who wrote that the Great Lakes or Chicago might be more at risk to climate change than coastal areas like Miami. How at risk is Chicago's shoreline due to climate change?
I think we are at risk. Climate will change in different ways in different places, and what we're showing is that the Great Lakes area is getting more rainfall than it was before, and that will continue to increase. So lake levels will continue to go up.
At the same time, lake levels were at record lows about 6 years ago.
Exactly.
So is this just a natural cycle? Do you anticipate it will come down at some point?
It will come down at some point. There are natural cycles, but the intensity of the changes, how frequently we see those changes, and difficulty in predicting is what makes it difficult. And as you mentioned, planning is crucial here. And we're in a place where it's a little bit harder to plan than maybe it has been in the past.
Alderwoman Haddon, does that mean a wholesale redesign of the lakefront? I mean, you mentioned Fullerton and Belmont and some of those walls there, but does the entire 20 some odd miles of shoreline have to be rethought?
From what I understand and talking with some of our folks who had been part of the city's Department of Environment with Army Corps, we're not necessarily looking at the full 28 miles, but we are looking at about 8 to 9 miles that actually was not evaluated and did not receive the funding for the build out that we saw, that actually the work just completed, about 20 years worth of work. But one thing's for sure, I would just echo the planning portion, right? We are going to see increasing challenges, and the big unknown right now is what will those cycle changes look like. It's going to be important that we coordinate our efforts. To the Army Corps' point, one of the things I learned is that DC hasn't approved their budget increases for the last 6 years for them to do the types of assessments that we need them to do for big scale infrastructure projects. So it's going to take a multi-government effort, and certainly in the 49th Ward, we're working with residents to help to make sure that happens.
So you're saying a lot of shoreline over the last 20 years has been redone, but there's about 8 to 9 miles it still needs to.
Correct.
Cam Buckner, can we put a price tag on any of that?
You know, I think we can't round the edges here. We've got to be real about this. It's going to be expensive, but in action, it's going to cost us more. So I think we need to bring all folks to the table to figure out the best way to address this from a financial standpoint, but we can't continue to do nothing.
You know, in Edgewater, Rogers Park, South Shore, you've got folks whose properties go right up to the water. How are they doing right now, and are they at risk for more damage and flooding?
Unfortunately, I'm worried that they are. So the January 11th storm saw a lot of private properties in South Shore become flooded. Condo buildings that lost electricity and things of that sort. And so when we talk about this water encroaching on people's homes and into these neighborhoods, that really paints the picture of how serious and how dire this issue is.
Kim, you mentioned that we're getting more rainfall now. This storm a week and a half ago was especially powerful with the wind, especially on the lakefront. Are more powerful storms going to be a normal part of Chicago's climate going forward?
Yeah, so that's an important point. It's not just more or less rainfall, it's the intensity of the storms that do come.
And what's your view? Does Chicago need sort of a wholesale rethinking of its lakeshore?
I think, I'm not an expert in infrastructure, of course, but the issue with the lake levels is there, and we've got to be ready for it.
Maria Haddon, what assistance is available right now for folks who have seen damage, who do abut right up to the water?
One of the things, so my office, Alderman Osterman's office in the 48th Ward, and I believe Alderman Mitchell's office in the 7th Ward, we've been coordinating with CDOT and with the mayor, the deputy mayor for infrastructure. Right now, please contact our offices, right? If you have concerns, whether you're renting, you're owning, contact our offices. So we've got resources we've been referring people to for them to look to coastal engineers. The city will be going over to private properties in the next couple of weeks and doing a full assessment so that we can kind of get a better idea of either existing damage or what potential damage would be as we try and coordinate with the state to find more resources and ways for private owners to have a little more access to secure their buildings.
Cam Buckner, same message for Southside residents?
Yes, please reach out to our office. We are in constant contact with our local alderman. Alderman Mitchell and I have worked very closely together on this issue. So the more that people are able to convey to us what's going on, I think the better we can coordinate with each other and try to change what's happening.
Kim Van Meter, what do you anticipate in the next months, in the spring, in the summer? Lake levels staying the same, more heavy rain, more possible erosion?
So we have seasonal cycles, and we usually see the highest lake levels during the year in June, usually. So that's something to look for. We'll see a peak then. And then just looking forward, Army Corps of Engineers has been predicting over the next 4 or 5 years we should expect to see lake levels generally above normal, about 3 feet above normal.
All right, well, we'll have to keep following this. Thank you all very much, Alderwoman Maria Haddon, Kim Van Meter, and State Representative Cam Buckner.
Thanks so much.
And up next, Brandis Friedman sits down with the president of the University of Illinois, so stay with us.
Don't ever miss Chicago Tonight. Subscribe to our podcast. Get a daily download of our show delivered to your desktop or mobile device. Go to WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight podcast and subscribe.
The University of Illinois President Tim Crain just got his contract renewed for 4 years, along with what some are calling a 40% pay hike. Despite overall college enrollment across Illinois dropping, the U of I campuses in Urbana-Champaign and Chicago are seeing record high enrollments. So what's behind the growth, and what are Illinois' public universities doing to keep high school students here from heading out of state? Joining us to lay out his priorities and talk about the challenges for the University of Illinois system is U of I President Tim Crain. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
So this is the first tuition hike that the university system has had in 6 years.
It is.
How have you been able to avoid that for so long?
Well, we started, almost my first action 5 years ago was to freeze tuition. So we've had 5 years of zero, and of course costs have grown at some inflationary level. So a complete freeze can't go on forever, as anybody with a family budget knows. But this is a very modest sub-inflationary hike. We're completely committed to college affordability and keeping student debt down. And in fact, that's been part of our successful strategy. You mentioned enrollment has grown. We're now at 89,000 students, more than half of the total number of students in public higher education in the state. Every one of the last 7 years, we've seen growth in Illinois native students, growth in diverse students. We've seen more research. So there's a lot of momentum at the university. And in part, it's because of our commitment to access, affordability, completion, so that students get good degrees that they can go on. And I think this is what the state needs, good quality, high-level education, excellent education on which they can build their lives and build the tax base that we all need to create a prosperity in the state. So we're out with a lot of momentum, which I'm delighted.
So how will this new revenue be used? Are there particular areas where you need to direct that money?
Yeah, it's a 1.8% increment at UIC and UIUC. And we want to use part of it to develop further affordability initiatives, but also recruiting faculty. What's happened over the last 5 years is as our success in enrollment has grown, really remarkable, in fact. There's now 89,000, and we're still going up in enrollment. The number of faculty has not grown at the same level. So our student-faculty ratios in classrooms that can, you know, if those go out of kilter, it can have a negative effect on the educational outcomes. So we want to rebalance a little bit the student-to-teacher ratios so that our classes are all at the world-class level that we're accustomed to be at. And so we'll be recruiting faculty. And it's a wonderful opportunity to recruit the right kind of caliber of faculty that can provide world-class educational opportunities for these many students in diverse settings, and can also contribute to new knowledge creation that will solve problems for society.
So what are the university's plans then to continue providing financial aid to students who may not be able to afford this increased tuition?
Well, we have a commitment also to financial aid. Our financial aid, if you look at it over the last 10 years, has doubled. We're now providing institutional financial aid to the tune of 240 million almost annually, which is more actually than the combination of federal and state tuition support, financial aid support. We're committed to continue to do that, particularly for both need and merit-based college-ready students. We recognize that this is a national problem. We want to be the best that we can be to address this question of access, affordability for college-ready students, and then give them the world-class opportunity to have a great education that they can build their lives on. So we're not going to sacrifice excellence, and that in part it's led us to this modest increment in tuition. Now, to put it in perspective, it's $212 per year extra in Urbana-Champaign, and it's about $95 extra per year in UIS in Springfield. So it's not an outlandish number, but it will contribute because of the numbers we're dealing with to our ability to recruit and retain faculty.
So one part of your financial aid package is the Illinois Commitment Scholarship, and it's recently been raised from $61,000 income limit to $67,000, making it a free education, free tuition for students whose families make less than that $67,000. How is the university going to be able to afford that increased income limit?
Well, this is thanks to our governor's leadership, frankly, that we're very grateful for. Commitment to not just education, but public higher education and these affordability issues that we've been talking about. So yes, we will be raising it at his request from $61,000 to $67,000, as you rightly pointed out, which takes it from the family median income, $61,000, to above the family median income, which means that more than half of the state's families will have access to a free tuition at Urbana-Champaign. We're insanely proud about this. This is our commitment to access and affordability at scale for families that don't have the socioeconomic advantages that others do. And we don't want any student to be precluded from a world-class education by their family economic circumstances. That's our commitment as a public institution.
So then is the university covering the cost of those students' tuitions out of someplace else in the budget, or is that just going to be added to your financial aid?
We will be adding it to the financial aid package in the future years. It won't hit all at once because, of course, there's a 4-year cohort that comes through. But it will add $4 million approximately to our financial aid package, which, as I mentioned, is already at $230 million. So we're going to stretch to do these kinds of things, and we're appreciative of the leadership and the commitment that's being demonstrated by the administration. We want to be full partners with this.
Large number of Chinese students at U of I has gotten a lot of attention, and it's grown quite a bit. 37 students in 2000 to more than 5,500 students in more recent years. How do you balance the mix of in-state students versus out-of-state and international students?
With care, and we look at this continuously. If you look at our undergraduate population across the system, 4 out of every 5 students are from Illinois. That's 4 out of every 5. Just 20% of our students are international. So we are committed to educating the state's population. Now, I put that in context, most of the Big Ten schools are nowhere near that number. That's 74, 75%. 80% of the incoming students, undergraduates, are from Illinois. We're very proud of that too. We want to continue to do that. We also love our international students. All students, no matter where they come from, what their backgrounds are, we want them to have a wonderful education. And they add diversity and different cultural backgrounds, and it enriches the whole education experience. So we want to see that grow as well, but not at the expense of Illinois residents. We're going to be committed to continuing our growth in Illinois residents. And that's important because the state has lost too many young people to adjacent states and elsewhere. And to build this economy, to create a tax base, we need our young people to stay and to have great lives in this state. We're committed also to Illinois. It's in our name.
And in 2002, it was about 30% of Illinois high school students attended college out of state. In 2017, 48% of high school graduates were leaving the state. So what are you doing to attract them, to get them to stay here?
Everything we can, Brandis. We're keeping the costs down. We're trying to market that so that people actually know what the out-of-pocket expenses are going to be. More people need to know about the financial aid opportunities, for example. We need to make sure that families appreciate the value of the education, the fact that our students graduate with less debt, they pay down their debt faster, they have better jobs, etc. All of these are factors in recruiting Illinois students to come to our universities. And that's working. That is definitely working. And we need to do more of that. So not only do we need to stem the outflow of talent, we need actually to recruit people to the state. And that we're doing in part, and also in partnership with many other partners, by creating more innovative opportunities for people to participate in industrial settings, to have internships, to have letters of reference, to even start companies of their own.
What are your thoughts on the evolution of standardized tests in the admissions process?
Well, we use standardized tests, but as one of many factors. I know some universities have stopped using it completely. We have what we call a holistic admission approach, where we look at many factors in student applications, leadership opportunities, where the high schools they've come from, the roles and approaches, and obviously their grades, and also the SATs. So it's not the predominant factor in our admission strategy. It's much more of a whole person kind of strategy. And we tailor that. We really want to make sure that talented students are not prescribed from coming to our university because of their family circumstances or their zip code where they lived. And so we look at many factors. So the SAT is not a big factor for us. It's one of many factors that we include in the analysis of incoming students. But we want to be known for inclusion, not selectivity and exclusion. And I'm very proud to say that way over half of more like 70% of the students who apply are admitted. We want to welcome students to our
And we're almost out of time. You've been the president of the system for the last 5 years. Yes. What are your priorities going forward?
Well, I think we've established a fabulous platform. I'm biased, of course, but our enrollment has grown, our research has grown, our philanthropy has doubled in the last several years, which implies that there's trust and confidence in what we're doing. We're recruiting faculty, wonderful faculty, we're retaining faculty. Our research, our problem solving, our partnerships are all growing. I want to use that platform to go to the next level. Some people talk about going from good to great. I want to go from great to magnificent. And with your help and other help, I think, and the leadership we have in Governor Pritzker's administration, that's within our reach now with this platform. So I'm very excited.
Big goals from the University of Illinois President Tim Crain. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And there's more Chicago Tonight just ahead, so stay with us.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/dailybriefing and sign up.
Now to Amanda Vinicky and a new leader in Illinois government. Amanda.
Brandis, Illinois has a new Senate president. After narrow votes by state senators and hours of closed-door negotiations, State Senator Don Harmon became Illinois' 39th Senate president Sunday. Since 2003, he's represented the state's 39th district, which includes parts of Oak Park and the Austin and Galewood neighborhoods. Harmon's taking on the leadership role amid a flurry, that is, of federal investigations aimed at different lawmakers, as well as a big tax-related question on the 2020 ballot. And President Harmon, for starters, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, as we noted, this took a lot of negotiating before actually you got elected pretty overwhelmingly by your peers in the end. But state government is a mess. Why do you want this job?
I want to build on our record of accomplishment in the Senate, taking more advantage of the immense talents of our diverse caucus to help ensure Illinois is on the right trajectory and to help restore the faith of the people who send us to Springfield in their state government.
Now, Senator and President isn't your only title. You're also partner at a law firm, one that, by the way, does work for state government agencies, for municipalities, for government pension funds. Is there an inherent conflict of interest when legislators work for law firms that are vying for government contracts?
I love practicing law, and I cannot imagine practicing anywhere but at the firm I've been with for the last 15 years. My partners are enormously talented, and more importantly, they are true and loyal friends. But I recognize that being Senate President is going to consume almost all of my time, and as I campaigned around the state with my colleagues, I made it clear to them that it would be my top priority. And so yesterday, when I got home from Springfield, I met with Mary Pat Burns, the head of the firm, my mentor, my role model for how to practice law in an honorable and ethical way. And we began the discussion of me stepping away from the practice in order to devote more time to the Senate presidency.
Leaving the law firm.
We're working out all those details, but I've recognized that I just don't have the time capacity to be a good Senate president and to practice law the way I've practiced it.
That's a significant change. You talked about the time that it takes. What about this notion of a conflict of interest? You're not the only one. Your predecessor, President Cullerton, was under scrutiny for also practicing as an attorney. Frankly, your counterpart in the House Speaker Michael Madigan, gets a lot of flack. He's constantly plagued by questions about also serving as an attorney that deals in property taxes. Is there an inherent conflict of interest?
You know, I was very careful to manage the conflicts, and my firm was incredibly committed to making sure I had the chance to maintain my integrity. The simple fact of the matter is I just don't have the time to be a good Senate president and to live up to my responsibilities to my partners and to my clients.
This is something that there's a task force that is looking at new ethical restrictions that could involve things such as legislators also serving as lobbyists, holding down second jobs. What are you hoping comes out of that task force, and might that be restrictions on second jobs?
Well, I do want to, we created this ethics committee in the veto session in the shadow of this federal investigation, and I am eager to see the results of their work. But I want to emphasize the incredible importance of a citizen legislature. It is important that people have real-world experiences, that the General Assembly includes farmers and pharmacists and teachers and social workers and lawyers and doctors. That's what makes for a good legislative outcome. So unless you want to overhaul the whole system and make everybody a full-time politician, I have a strong belief in a citizen legislature.
Because technically, General Assembly is a part-time job, although perhaps not when you rise to that level of leadership. What do you want to do with it specifically? You're going to be in a powerful position, able to pass measures that maybe before didn't quite have that heft behind them. What are you particularly looking at?
So as I traveled the state meeting with my colleagues and talking about what they wanted to do, there were two things that came to the surface over and over again. First, we are angry and embarrassed by this ethical cloud hanging over state government, and we want to do something meaningful, direct, and resolute to address that, some real ethics reforms. We want to figure out exactly what problems we're trying to solve and then solve them. The other thing that I heard at every turn was this real urgency to rationalize our tax policy. And the first thing we need to do is pass the fair income tax. We put it on the ballot for voters to approve in November, and we're going to work very hard to do that. Passing the fair tax won't solve all of our problems, but it'll make it easier to solve a lot of them, including the property tax issue.
Now, we'll get back to both of those in just a second, but speaking of your law firm and ethics, a recently resigned state senator, Marty Sandoval, his office was raided by the FBI, and that search warrant that was released of items that investigators were looking for included seizure of documents from the law firm that you're evidently going to be stepping away from. Do you have any idea what that's in regards to?
I have no reason, well, first of all, it's no secret that Marty Sandoval and I have not gotten along. And Marty also had a bad habit of doing opposition research on people he thought were rivals. At the same time, I have no reason to think it was anything but an empty file folder, and I am not aware, to my knowledge, the firm has no involvement whatsoever.
So no contact or anything from the FBI. This is something that we ask all Illinois politicians these days.
What a shame, but no contact whatsoever.
In terms of the graduated income tax, this is something that you were a proponent of before Governor Pritzker was actually elected. Why do you believe that this is the solution? Particularly, why should people trust you and other legislators, given all that we've been talking about?
Well, the fair income tax is the same model used in almost every state with an income tax and at the federal level. It allows us to tax lower income at lower levels and higher incomes at higher levels. It's common sense tax policy. Right now, the way the Constitution is set up, we couldn't raise taxes on someone earning more than $1 million without raising taxes on everybody. This would allow us the nimbleness to reduce taxes on middle-class families and still generate more revenue to provide the state services everyone expects us to provide.
Your town, Oak Park in particular, has been one of the places that is vexed by rising property taxes. I think the average is over $10,000 a year in Oak Park. Does actual property tax reform or dealing with that have to wait until this graduated income tax question is resolved?
It's a critical precursor in my view. And let's just talk about the mathematics. The property taxes across the state are too high because we rely almost exclusively on the property tax to fund our schools. If the state lived up to its obligation to provide the primary source of funding for kindergarten through high school, we'd be able to push the property tax burden down. But because the state never has, we don't. The fair income tax would allow us to generate that income at a statewide level and push down the burden on, or the pressure on property taxes.
As you try to get your caucus to go along with all of the things that you're pushing for and that we've been talking about, there is talk of unity when you were elected, and yet there's evidence that caucus is fractured. In fact, the senator who had likewise been vying for the president job came out afterward and blamed another senator. There's some clear divisions, it seems, within the Black caucus. How do you bridge alliances at this point in time?
Well, first of all, Senator Emil Jones was a solid senator through this whole process. He was straight with me about where he stood, and he really distinguished himself as a leader. Senator Kimberly Lightfoot, I'm thrilled, is staying on as our majority leader. She's an exceptional legislator, and she's going to be a great partner. We're a big family. The Democratic caucus is like your unruly family at a Thanksgiving dinner. We fight, we get loud, but we all come together and we make sure we do what's right for working families across the state.
I want to know what advice did you get from former Senate President John Cullerton before he left?
He told us when he announced his retirement that running for Senate President is a humbling experience. And it has been very much that. We all know each other, we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, but getting to know your colleagues better, getting to see them in their district, really gives you a sense of the state. And it's especially humbling that they trust me with this opportunity at this point.
You also go way back with Governor J.B. Pritzker. Explain that, and given that history, and frankly, given the money that he has access to be able to pour into Senate Democrats' campaigns, which is another of your new responsibilities, what happens if you have a disagreement over policy? Is he somebody you can fight against?
Governor Pritzker has been a friend for more than 25 years. I think that our own personal philosophies line up very well. But that said, it's not my agenda, it's the caucus's agenda, and I will fiercely defend the independence of the state Senate. That doesn't mean we won't get along. It doesn't mean we won't get great things done. We're just going to have to do it in a cooperative and collaborative fashion.
And let's end on a high note here. Something that people might not know about you unless they've visited Springfield is that you were part of a band, played the harmonica, the guitar with some fellow legislators. So I want to know, are you going to keep playing now that you have evidently free time stepping away? Is a lawyer going to resurrect the Boat Drink Caucus or what?
You know, for folks that don't know, the Boat Drink Caucus started several years ago. 2 Republican state reps and I started playing in local establishments. And I really do think it had a material impact on bipartisanship in the Capitol. People who fought together all day came to our performances at night and became friends. It was really something wonderful. Both of them have retired from the House. I have new responsibilities. I'll never give up playing guitar, but the public performances may be fewer and further between.
Well, thank you so very much, Senate President Don Harmon. We look back to having you back on Chicago Tonight, hopefully soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and Paris is back with more right after this.
Now let's take a look at some more of what's making news in Chicago tonight. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say they want to know why as many as 574 people were registered to vote, even though they might not have been Illinois residents or U.S. citizens. This as the Illinois Secretary of State's office admits a glitch in the state's automatic voter registration system. According to the office and the Illinois State Board of Elections, those people were erroneously registered to vote in the process of getting their driver's license. Governor J.B. Pritzker says he supports legislative hearings into what went wrong. Meanwhile, downstate Republican Congressman Rodney Davis and other Illinois Republicans say automatic voter registration should be put on hold until the problems are fixed.
We hope to get answers. We hope by that time they'll be able to look into the processes that caused this issue, that caused the concern. But let's also make sure that we fix it before we move into the next legislative session and firmly before we move into the next election season.
And we'll have more on this in tonight's Spotlight Politics. Speaking of voting, Illinois school students of voting age will have an easier time casting ballots. Today, Governor Pritzker signed a new law that allows students to take 2 hours off of school on Election Day to go vote. The governor says the bill is part of a larger effort to make voting more accessible to all who are eligible in the state of Illinois. 17-year-olds who will turn 18 on or before Election Day are eligible to vote in the primary.
With this new law, voting eligible young people like you will have the freedom to fit voting into your school day, and I, for one, am proud to encourage that.
New information on what caused the death last month of a Chicago rapper who went by the name Juice WRLD. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled the death the result of an accidental overdose of oxycodone and codeine. Juice WRLD, whose real name was Jared Higgins, died after he went into cardiac arrest as federal agents searched his luggage for guns and drugs at Midway Airport. Higgins was 21 years old. Dispensaries and cultivators are getting into the new Illinois legal marijuana industry, so why not the corner pot dealer? That's a question today posed by some community leaders. They say they want state licenses for peddlers to be able to deal legal weed on the street. And they say the licenses should go to ex-offenders and the unemployed. Proponents say it could help reduce violence in some South and West Side communities.
Young men and women can make money in their own neighborhoods. There's a 45% unemployment rate amongst African American youth between the ages of 16 and 28 right now in Chicago. We can hopefully reduce unemployment by about 10 to 15%, and at the same time we can ease some of the tensions around the illegal drug trade. And then last but not least, there's a possibility we can reduce some of the gun violence.
As for the weather, it's the calm before the storm right now. Light snow begins late tonight and is expected to continue as mixed precipitation all the way until Saturday. A low of 30 tonight, then tomorrow, rain and snow mix with a high near 35. Now, Brandis, back to you.
Paris, thank you. Still to come on Chicago Tonight. What prompted an art gallery to move from River North to the city's south side? And as you heard Paris mention, why 574 people in Illinois were erroneously registered to vote. That and more in Spotlight Politics. And how used vegetable oil gets turned into biodiesel fuel at Cook County Jail. But first, some of today's top business headlines from Crain's. Here's A.D. Quigg.
Brandis, one of the standouts on Chicago's skyline is changing hands. Big Red, the former CNA Center, is selling for $370 million to a New York investor. Prominent Chicago developer John Buck bought the 44-story tower from CNA Financial 4 years ago for roughly a third of that price. The sale gives downtown landlords a shot of confidence after commercial property sales took a dip in Chicago last year. Meanwhile, Chicago's housing market closed out 2019 with one of the strongest months in a long time. The city saw big boosts in both the number of homes sold and the median sale price. More than 1,800 homes sold in December, according to Illinois Realtors. That's 9% higher than 2018 and the biggest sales increase since March 2017. Before that, the city was facing a nearly 15-month stretch of down sales. The city's median December sales price was just under $280,000. Those numbers are in line with the national housing market in December. Across the country, home sales were up about 11% from the year before. And finally, pre-orders start this week for a modern twist on a throwback piece of tech. Pre-sales begin Sunday for Motorola's new $1,500 foldable Razr phone. In-store sales start February 6th. The Chicago-based company missed the big holiday season sales because of supply issues. The new foldable Razr looks just like its early 2000s predecessor, but runs an Android operating system and has touchscreens inside and out. Companies like Samsung have had a hard time launching foldable devices because of problems with failing screens. For Crain Chicago Business and chicagobusiness.com, I'm A.D. Quigg. Back to you, Brandis.
Thanks, A.D. A husband and wife duo are turning their dreams into reality with a design center on the city's south side. It houses appliances, artwork, and everything in between. Arts correspondent Angel Edo introduces us to the couple behind the design.
When Chicago painter and sculptor Gerald Griffin got an opportunity to move his art gallery from River North to Chatham, it was a chance he couldn't refuse.
People ask me, well, why would you move, from the River North to the south side of Chicago? And I said, why not? We always, as a collective, as a community, we always feel like we have to go outside of our comfort zone to go somewhere else to, have nice things. And our idea is we should be able to have that within our own community.
The Gerald Griffin Gallery now sits inside of the Bordeaux Griffin Design Center, also home to his wife Francie's showroom.
This design center is a first for this neighborhood, but probably a first for the city, probably a first period, because I don't think there's any interior designer, who has her own showroom. It features an interior design showroom for residential and commercial work. It features a 50-foot conference room, a banquet area, a fireplace lounge area, and a 3,000-foot art gallery, which features my work, as well as a coterie of emerging artists.
It wasn't until someone noticed his artistic skill in high school that Griffin realized he could create. He says he wants to help future artists discover that same passion.
There's a new component that's going to be a part of it, which is the Artist Life, not-for-profit. And it's an opportunity to be able to share my experience with young kids who probably never been inside an art gallery.
As an architectural designer and licensed general contractor, Bordeaux Griffin says she's eager to get people excited about recreating their home.
It's always been my dream to have a big design center. He can have his gallery and I can have my design showroom. We can work at the same space and still create differently.
While Griffin's gallery houses paintings and sculptures he's created over the years, his artwork can also be seen paired with household accessories designed by his wife. It's this non-traditional combination the duo have created that Griffin says he hopes inspires future artists.
We're trying to bring that whole idea of understanding your intangible abilities, but also showing you that that's an entrepreneurial aspect to that too, that's a valuable commodity, that you're valuable.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
And the Bordeaux Griffin Design Center held its grand opening last weekend. You can visit our website for more on this story. There's fallout today over an election registration kerfluffle. 574 people, as Paris mentioned earlier, were registered to vote by the Illinois Secretary of State's office, even though a good number of them might not be U.S. citizens. It's caused concern on both sides of the aisle, with lawmakers now calling for hearings. Amanda Vinicky and Paris Schutz tackle that and the latest on impeachment and more in this week's Spotlight Politics. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. So 574 people apparently erroneously registered to vote. Amanda, what happened?
Basically, these were individuals that were going to a Secretary of State's office. Illinois passed a law in 2017, bipartisan, actually signed by Republican Governor Bruce Rauner, which is significant because you've seen in many of our neighboring states, Republicans really looking to go back on voter rights and accessibility towards voting. And the plan was to make it easy. In this case, it apparently was too easy. The Secretary of State's office says that it was just an error in the programming, so really a computer glitch. When people checked non-citizen, that should remove them from the automatic voter registration system. Instead, they were automatically registered to vote. And so that is what you have happened. You had some of them, really like 16, that actually did end up voting in elections in 2018 and 2019.
Actually, 19 of them voted, but what election authorities found, 3 of those people actually were legally registered to vote in Illinois, so we don't really know what happened there. And they say that there might be more of those 19 that actually were registered to vote, and then there were 106.
Or like were actual citizens.
They were Illinois residents.
Yeah.
So they were non-citizens. It's also important to note that none of these are undocumented immigrants. These are people that have a green card, they've got a visa, they're waiting for their citizenship, but still they can't vote in Illinois. And apparently when they went to get their license, there was this little glitch. So there's still so many questions here. The state election board says they've contacted the people that did vote. The Secretary of State's office sent a letter to all this 574 people saying, you're not in trouble, this was our fault. But for people that did vote that aren't citizens, they do have some kind of legal exposure here. You know, that is a federal crime. You can't do that. So there's going to be a hearing possibly next week, and we'll find out more because there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Hearing, an investigation, you have a member of Congress, granted, a Republican who is in a tight race for re-election, who is calling for a federal, it's not even a hearing, he's calling it a listening session, nonetheless an investigation. And you have some Republicans that say Illinois needs to put pause on this automatic voter registration program, period. That is something that the Secretary of State's office, Governor Pritzker, say, no, don't need to go there. But this really is exposing Secretary of State Jesse White. He's been one of the most popular politicians in the state of Illinois. He has apologized. He says this was our error and we fixed it. But he has been really, there are some groups that typically would be allied with him, with Democrats, you would think, democracy groups that are saying, he's at fault for making a mess of this program in the first place. Again, the Secretary of State's office pushes back on that, but these organizations say Illinois is too late, have had years to work out kinks, and there's no excuse.
Let's move on to impeachment. Opening arguments today, they debated over the rules. What's the impact then, Paris?
Well, yesterday, yeah, the debate over the rules. Today, long opening argument from the House manager, specifically Representative Adam Schiff. You know, yesterday was very interesting. Most people in Washington think that the outcome here is pretty much not in doubt, that because there's a Republican majority, there will be a vote for an acquittal of the president. Today, Schiff outlined the case, all the evidence, the testimony, and the documents that they have that they say prove that President Trump abused his authority and also obstructed justice by not cooperating with the oversight investigation in Congress. So because it seems like this is not in doubt, the political angle here is fascinating. So Senate Majority Leader McConnell, his number one aim is to preserve his Republican majority in Senate. So he wants this trial over with. He doesn't want any harm to any of his Senate Republicans. There's that small group of so-called moderates that might be open to more robust hearings, might be open to witnesses. So he's got to protect them because some of them are up for re-election. We don't know whether they're going to be witnesses. We do know that yesterday Chuck Schumer, the senator, offered amendments to call witnesses like John Bolton and others. It was Mick Mulvaney. it was clear that Republicans were not going to go for that. Unanimously, they said no. So again, it's a political thing. He has them on the record now saying that they did not support calling witnesses if they don't, in a future date, decide to change their mind and call witnesses. So you can almost see the campaign ads writing themselves. Republican Senator X did not support calling any witnesses in the so-called Trump cover-up.
And what's next? Are we going to be done with this by the weekend?
No, but
No.
not by the weekend. Certainly not that. And I mean, even when this is done, this is going to linger. I think something that we need to keep in mind always is that people by now seem to be pretty decided about where they're at in terms of President Donald Trump, less so about their local legislators, their congresspeople, who they know and may be kinder to no matter what happens. But as Paris noted, that's really where we're at now.
And Amanda, we're almost out of time, but we just had the newly minted Senate President Don Harmon here. Any quick takeaways for you? And he made a bit of news tonight.
It is certainly significant that he's going to be leaving his law firm, particularly as the Senate is very much under scrutiny. As I noted there, Speaker Madigan, as well as all of these federal investigations, are swirling. So it is significant. What I think people are going to, it's not going to stop, however, questions in terms of what now? What about all of these other lawmakers who continue to serve as attorneys? He said it was a time issue.
Okay, Amanda Venicky and Paris Schutz, thanks. So biodiesel is diesel fuel made from vegetable or animal-based fats. It's a clean-burning, renewable alternative to petroleum diesel refined from crude oil. Inmates at Cook County Jail are turning used cooking oil into biodiesel as part of a new program. Chicago Tonight's Evan Garcia recently visited the jail for this story. Here's another look at what he found.
Believe it or not, this Cook County Sheriff's truck is essentially powered by vegetable oil.
The emission that biodiesel produces gets absorbed by nature.
A new program at Cook County Jail gives inmates the opportunity to make biodiesel fuel derived from vegetable oil, with a little help from chemistry.
This is our biodiesel. This is our usable product. We could run any diesel engine on this product here.
Corrections Officer Tony Lordo first explored the idea in January with a homemade kit.
We started out by making small batches. We didn't have this processor up until a few months ago. Prior to that, I had to scavenge pieces and bits and baubles throughout the county in order to make my own processor, and this just makes it so much easier.
The program's first class is made up of 3 inmates, 1 man under probation, and another man in the jail's work alternative program.
Okay.
The process actually starts in the officer dining hall, where vegetable oil used to fry food is wheeled away to eventually make fuel.
You're going to see us going to start shooting out. There you go.
The used cooking oil is filtered for any bits of food. Next comes an important process called transesterification. Vegetable oil contains triglycerides, chemical compounds composed of 3 fatty acids and a glycerol. When the vegetable oil reacts with alcohol in the presence of a catalyst, in this case potassium hydroxide, the chemical reaction produces biodiesel and glycerin, a byproduct which sits at the bottom of the tank and is separated.
Look how thick and dark that is.
Officer Lordo plans to boost the group's environmental impact by eventually making fertilizer and hand soap from the glycerin.
Say you need 9 gallons of alcohol now because the strength is less, or
no.
You're adding...
Inmate Harris Codius plans to put the education and experience to use.
It's definitely, better use of my time than what I'd usually be doing. It's awesome to learn something like this that I can use when I get out of here. I work in restaurants and would like to get into doing a food truck business, so this is something that I could use in the future.
The jail's biodiesel fuel program takes place in its Mental Health Transition Center. This is where detainees receive job training and therapy. Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart started the center 5 years ago. Before then, this site was actually a boot camp.
I understand there's evil in this world, and that there's people in our custody who've done horrific things that are going down to prison for the rest of their lives. I get that. There's the much larger group of people who are going to be here for a temporary period of time and are not going down to the prison system. 85% of the people who come into the jail go right back to the community. They don't go down to prison. That being the case, I've always seen it as our job, our challenge, whatever you want to call it, is to work with them both on sort of the mental side of it, whether it's mental health issues or not. It might be educational issues, but things that affect their mind and the way they think.
Potassium or the sodium hydroxide.
Inmate Fernellis Bigelow-Lighty says the activity improves his outlook.
I wouldn't be in the same place or even be able to smile and that type of stuff if I was stuck in the cell all day. Even coming out, it's just not the same thing. Being able to actually do this, learn about this, learn something new. I think that's, for me personally, that's the hardest thing, is that there's no stimulation while we're locked up. TV, but I don't consider that stimulating. So this is really incredible.
Once the biodiesel is bottled up, it's ready to go in the fuel tank. The sheriff's office estimates the program could save the jail up to $20,000 a year and plans to grow the operation.
We have 2 vehicles currently that are running on it full time. We have 2 other vehicles that are going to be running on it shortly, and we're looking to expand this to, God willing, the fleet.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Evan Garcia.
The sheriff's office says the program has produced 500 gallons of biodiesel since Officer Lordo started processing the fuel a year ago. And that's our show for this Wednesday night.
Please join us tomorrow night live at 7, and we leave you now with a street musician performing on State Street earlier today. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
There was a time when I was alone, nowhere to go and no place to call home. My only friend was the man in the moon. Even sometimes he'd go away too. Then one night as I closed my eyes, I saw a shadow flying high. He came to me with the sweetest smile, told me he wanted to talk for a while. He said, Peter Pan, that's what they call me. I promise that you'll never
Closed captioning for this program is brought to you by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.
I am a lost boy from Neverland.